everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Health and Nutrition During the Pandemic and On. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We can go ahead and start with introduction. So we have Dr. Jami Zamyad. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. This is Jami. I am a registered dietitian, and I have a doctorate in clinical nutrition. My current position is the Director of Clinical Nutrition at Stanford Children's Hospital. I love what I do, and I'm very passionate about nutrition and overall health and well-being. So if you see me, using my arms and getting really excited, it's because I love this conversation and I love this subject. So I'm in Northern California currently, obviously working at Stanford, and very excited to join Lori and Negeen in this conversation.
Thank you. And then we have Dr. Lori Baudino. You want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Well, I share Jami's enthusiasm. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and a board-certified dance movement therapist, and I specialize with children and families here in Los Angeles. I work in private practice as well as at pediatric hospitals with children with cancer and special needs. I see children 0 to 18 and all kinds of parenting fun experiences, and I'm also a parent as well. And I have to say, nutrition is a huge piece of all our mental and emotional health. So I was even so excited to join with Jami tonight. And we're excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, Lori. And hi, everyone. I'm Negeen. I'm going to be moderating tonight. I'm an educational therapist. So I work with kids with learning disabilities, mainly kids with autism or like dyslexia. I work at UCLA at the laboratory school. It's an elementary school. And then I also have a private practice in LA. So we'll go ahead and get started. So just a couple housekeeping items. So the session is being recorded. You should have gotten a notification that it is being recorded. So if you do not want to be a part of the session, you might want to leave because it's being recorded. Please be mindful in terms of confidentiality. So if we're talking about a specific topic, if you want to bring a specific case, just be mindful in using names and identifying personal information for that reason. We want this to be a non-judgmental space and a positive free space for you guys to ask questions and really engage with the content. So feel free to ask questions, and that we're not going to be critical of, there's no dumb questions. And so in terms of asking questions, I'm going to be monitoring the chat, so you can virtually raise your hand or just, signal at me if you want to ask a question, or you can also write it in the chat and I can redirect it to Jami or Lori. Anyone have any questions about housekeeping? No? Okay. Moving on. All right, so moving on to who's in the room. So we just wanted to get an idea of who's here. So I'm going to send out a poll. You should have just received it now. Did you receive it?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
So I guess I need to do it too, because it's on my screen.
It won't let us as our host. We just have to participate.
Okay. I'm a provider.
Yeah. We didn't put it all the above. I could put it for all the above.
Right.
Okay. So did everyone vote? 5 out of 7, 71%. Okay, so we have, can everyone see the poll thing on my screen? Or should I just announce it? No, you can't see it. Okay, so we mostly have students, providers, here for personal and professional development, or friends with the speakers. Awesome.
Wonderful.
We're excited
Thank
to
you all.
Thanks for sharing. So we're gonna go ahead and, I think I just shared.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, sorry, I just exited out. Sorry.
No problem.
Okay.
You're good.
Okay, going on. So you can go ahead and start here. So Lori.
Okay, well, I love to give some experiences as we go into talking and learning so much about nutrition. So I have a raspberry with me, and those of you that are able to have some type of food near you, is anyone available to have some type of food to try all together?
Of cashews.
Cashews? Okay. For those of you that don't, just be mindful of maybe you just ate something or even just the taste in your current state in your mouth. So we're just going to take a moment and practice some mindful eating. This is something you could do with yourself and your children, your spouse or partner, and something that we sometimes forget to do. I might be shoveling the food in my mouth because I have to go somewhere, but it's really important that we slow down. So if you take your food, and I actually have to talk, so I'm not going to try mine, but we're going to start by just looking at the textures and colors. So I'm having a raspberry, so I might be noticing the bumps on it. Mine's a bit gooey. You're welcome to communicate out anything of your textures or what you're noticing about it, the colors. I'm noticing the shape is round and it's got this center hole to it. It's also quite squishy. So imagine if we took our time and we really explored what we're about to put in our mouths. Our children are really great scientists when they do this. They usually have a lot of adjectives and ways to describe things, and you're building their vocabulary. So we tend to eat with our hands or utensils. For this, it could be nice to actually touch the actual food and try it out. So you kind of give your children permission to touch, or your patient or client that you're working with. And look, it's already filling all my fingers. So I might start to notice the gooiness of it. Is it sticky? Is it leaving a mark? Wow, it leaves quite an impression on my hands. And then you're going to take a bite. So really slowly taking a bite, you take a little piece and you start to notice just at the tip of your tongue and in between the front of your teeth, what that sensation is. You might even take a breath in your nose. And you might even start to notice if you were to move that food around to either side of your tongue, to the back of your teeth. And imagine giving your children that much control or yourself over what you're eating. Noticing that all this movement takes a lot of work, a lot of muscles. We're building that jaw, that strength, and it is a muscle. And then even closing your eyes, you might decide, what does it remind you of? Does it bring up a memory? The last time you ate it, people that you ate this food with? Does it make you feel like you are in nature and you're eating something off the land? Does it make you think about a favorite restaurant or a favorite memory? And then notice as you swallow, you're still chewing. Imagine we took that long, we're still chewing it. It gets quite soft and we swallow. And notice whether it was hard to swallow or easy. And then take a moment and notice where that swallow, where that taste went. Do you still feel it on your tongue? Is it in the back of your throat? Down your throat? Is it all the way into your belly? And we'll just take another breath, because I know some of us are more thinking about this, but I wanted to lead you through it so that this is something you might practice with those that you're working with or in your own lives. But just notice in that belly or in this body of yours, any feelings that come up. If you're aware of like, wow, I really want more, I'm satisfied, that was way more than I expected to experience from one little bite. Notice if you could hold back and wait, or if you feel like you got to be like, okay, I got to move on. I know especially with children, they might want to go to the next bite. And just pay attention to the difference in that belly of yours and in your throat. Like I have a specific stimulating feeling in my mouth way more than I do in my legs right now or my feet. They're not really doing much for me, but I can definitely feel it still in my belly and in my taste buds. And I actually really want more. So I'll stop there. Does anyone have any thoughts, or have any of you done mindful eating before with a child or with yourself?
Lori, I think this is such a great segue into talking about nutrition, because so many of us take for granted that mealtime. For myself, so much of my meals are rushed. They're in between activities that I need to and work that I need to get done. So being really mindful and sitting down and eating and taking the time to taste the food, to smell the food, to examine the textures and the mouth feel and how it makes you feel. It allows, it's that feeling of gratefulness too, right? So, and there's so much conversation and research about how well your body absorbs the nutrients when you do take your time to eat and chew and process and allow your body to get even ready for a meal through the smells that are going on around you. Which, it's all connected, and thank you for that. That was a great way to start.
Thank you.
So I guess I can start. One of the first things that I want to say at the beginning, before we get going, is that tonight's topic of nutrition is a conversation that is really simple and it's really basic. It's more geared towards how we can improve and maintain our health during a pandemic, what that means, and how important the health of our immune system and building our immune system during this time, how important that is. So I will not be covering anything in reference to any allergies, food sensitivities, any disease-specific diets. This is just simple nutrition covering, basic material that hopefully it'll raise some questions and get you thinking and hopefully provide you with some tips to take away. And I think just to start, on the picture on the right of the slide shows what I do as an integrative and functional dietitian or nutritionist or doctor of nutrition. I have so many titles. and it really, nutrition is very important. Exercise is very important. I think in our daily life right now, we're bombarded with different diets and different ways of exercise. But the fact of the matter is that there's so many different factors that contribute to our overall health, and it all goes back to nutrition. You need energy to work out. You need energy to deal with stress. You need for your metabolic pathways and for the health of your cells and your tissues and organs. So that picture on the right kind of gives the connection as a whole, and what all that means, and what a functional dietitian or nutritionist does. So just to get going on this, the quality of our food is really important because it helps and contributes to our immune system, which I always mention as our army. It's what helps us to fight disease. It goes to work immediately when there's something foreign that enters our body, whether it be a virus or a bacteria or a parasite. The quality of food, and what I mean by that is food in its natural state, whole foods, nothing processed, preferably fresh, preferably in season. If meat, something preferably that's grass-fed, because we know we're educated now and know enough that animals that are raised with injections of hormones and antibiotics have been shown to cause disease in humans. So non-GMO also, and grass-fed, organic when possible. And another contribution to whole foods and natural foods is that it decreases inflammation, which kind of circles back to fighting and strengthening the immune system. So with these two, natural whole foods contribute to how our body deals with stress during a pandemic. It deals with potentially being exposed to a virus that we know nothing or not much about as of right now. So, so that's it. Any questions?
I have a ton of questions, but I think I should wait till after everyone's done.
Okay.
Okay.
One of the things that we talked about with Lori and Negeen was, what is inflammation and how do you know you have inflammation? So some of the signs of inflammation in the body are the feeling of heat, almost like a fever, feeling tired and fatigue, joint pain, muscle pain, abdominal pain, things that are kind of make you feel like you're not 100%. If you have rashes, that's a clear usual sign. If it's not an allergy and you have a rash on your body, if something is showing up on your skin, for sure you know there's something going on internally. So these are some of the signs of inflammation, and as we move forward, I'll talk more about that and foods that have antioxidant effects.
Mhm.
But save your questions. I want to answer them all.
Awesome.
So I just wanted to briefly talk about foods that contribute to health, and the types of foods that are good within the macronutrients, which are your proteins, your carbohydrates, and your fats. Protein, meaning both animal and plant-based, need to be, again, I talked about their importance as far as the cell and tissue organ function, having it be lean. The less saturated fat, the better. Plant-based, that's the easiest ways. And I think for people that are on budget and people that have limited resources, it's really simple with purchasing and having, like my pantry right now, I have quinoa, I have canned beans, I have rice, and these are a combination of these foods are pretty inexpensive, easy to prepare, and you get all your essential amino acids that way. I'm not a big fan of animal protein. It's rare and in between. I do enjoy, shellfish and seafood, but for the most part, my meals are based around plant-based protein. And then carbohydrates, I know during times of stress, and especially what we've had to face with this in-home and staying at home, we turn to comfort foods, refined sugars, baking. I know a lot of people have started baking cakes and cookies, and these are foods that although, I also encourage families to cook with their kids and bake with their kids, but being mindful of that too. And just like there's certain foods we should eat to build our immune systems, there's a lot of foods that we need to be mindful of that hurt our immune system, and refined sugars are one of them. And I'm sure you all know about that. Having more vegetables, sticking to 100% whole grains. I know just going shopping for bread and looking at the bread labels and seeing whole wheat, so many people grab it because it says whole wheat, but if you look at the ingredients on the back and it says whole wheat flour, it's no different from regular flour. So kind of focusing on that 100% whole grain bread if you are eating that bread, and then fruits. And then with fats, concentrating on more of the essential fatty acids that contribute to lowering inflammation, omega-3s, which can be found in nuts and seeds. Again, a lot of the vegetables have oils in them. And if you do use oil, cooking oils, sticking to cold press and organic when possible. If not, vegetable oils, being mindful of using oils for frying versus for dressings and sauces, and the smoke point, keeping that into consideration because that could be harmful as well. Any questions on macronutrients, or are we going to keep all the questions till the end?
Well, I'm thinking, Jamie, if we go into the micro, then we might enter into some questions before we move on too. So
Okay.
that would be great.
So again, the micronutrients that I've mentioned on this slide are mainly geared towards their antioxidant effect, their ability to help with the immune system and strengthen the immune system. So the antioxidant being vitamin A, C, D, E, and K, minerals such as zinc, which are really important to healing, and then the phytochemicals, which are additional compounds in fruits and vegetables and grains, so natural foods again, we keep going back to that. And what they provide are the colors and the flavors of plants and the smell. So cilantro, onions, garlic, these, the pungent flavor and smell of garlic, that is a compound that causes that. And it definitely has antioxidant and anti-carcinogenic, which causes cancers. So a lot of herbs and spices. And that's something, a whole different subject, where I have categories, and I just recently bought my son a bunch of herbs and spices. For Italian food, I have a category. For Asian food, I have a category. For Mexican food, I have a category, and bought him all these herbs and spices that whenever he wants, he can use it with either meat or plant-based and get that flavor and have it be healthy as well.
Jamie, when you said that, we've been doing that a lot at our house with our kids, of just taking almost the same ingredients of like the quinoa or the rice or the pastas, and you go from having Italian flavor to having like more of a Thai, or even we've had Indian, like more of the turmeric flavors, and it's amazing that you all of a sudden have like all different meals.
Yeah, and it's so simple, right? But just sprinkling some cumin, ground cumin, and coriander on chicken or on rice, you can make a Indian dish. Adding some coconut milk to it, it's really simple too. It doesn't require a lot of cooking skills, and it's pretty inexpensive as well, which is important.
Definitely. Thank
you.
So,
Jamie, we have a question from Bree.
Yeah. So my question basically is, with all of these macronutrients, what's the difference between eating them and ingesting a vitamin? And is it the same thing, or what's the difference between that?
Amazing question.
Thank you so much.
So one of the things to keep in mind with food, there's a synergistic effect that comes from natural foods, which cannot be replicated in any supplements. And your body has a better ability to digest and absorb that rather than supplementation. I know we've had great advances in supplements over the last 10 years. I'm actually very impressed every time I go to seminars and conferences. I see these companies that are developing just amazing products, and unless you have issues with eating and digesting of food not in its natural form, I would definitely stick with the natural food form rather than a supplement. Another reason why natural foods are better, besides the synergistic effect and absorbability, is that your body deals with it on that same level. So if you start taking too much of one thing, for example, bodybuilders use a lot of isolated protein amino acids, and they take it in shake form, or they take it in supplement form, and that displaces your overall protein and amino acid intake, and can over time have cause deficiencies. Like I take zinc right now. I'm also 55. So at this age, there's certain nutrients that I need to supplement my diet with, because I can't eat the amount of calories. I can't get it all in the amount of calories that I'm supposed to eat, because my metabolism is not at its peak. When I was younger, you could eat whatever you want and you digest and you break it down, you burn it. So I take zinc right now. But then I have to be careful, and I take it sporadically, like 2 or 3 times a week, because it can also, too much zinc can develop copper deficiency. So you have to maintain, and because none of that is disclosed, if I were to develop a supplement right now, I would want you to buy it and use it, and I would tell you it's the best thing that could have ever happened to you. But if you do some research and study it, you'll see that it's better to eat it in food and in natural form rather than in supplement form.
Jami, I love when you say it, that it's called a supplement. It's just a simple statement, but it was like, oh yeah, you're right. That's the word. It's so helpful to think of.
Yeah, it's supposed to supplement your diet. It's not supposed to be your diet. So, although it sounds inviting and it sounds good, because it takes a lot of work out of preparing, because getting food, preparing and shopping and all of that and making a meal is more time consuming than grabbing a bottle of a protein shake and swallowing a few supplements. But definitely long-term effects are, plus the fact that the whole preparation of food and getting together and sitting at a table, it has a lot of emotional benefits too, right? If it's a family, it brings you together. It's mealtime, and it brings conversation. And so there's a lot of psychological benefits to that, rather that you don't get from grabbing a shake and
So I think that's actually the perfect segue into Lori's part about the motivation behind.
Actually, I'm so sorry, Negeen, before we move on, I have a quick question going off of Bree's question. Would you give the same answer for someone that's plant-based? I've been plant-based for over 3.5 years now, and I hear different perspectives. I don't know which to follow, specifically with omega-3s and also vitamin B12.
So definitely with omega-3s, as a plant-based diet, you would be okay, because you get a lot of them just through nuts and seeds. And I wouldn't be so concerned. With a plant-based diet, you definitely have to be educated, and your diet and your meals need to be planned almost vigilantly. Like, you have to be strict and make sure that you get all the nutrients. B12 is a little tricky. There's so many, so the vegans out there would argue and say that you can get B12 through a plant-based source. I would say supplement with B12 for sure. And if you have any digestion or absorption issues or GI issues, I would definitely also consider zinc and iron, and at least do it yearly lab work to make sure that you're up to par with everything.
Thank you so much. That's exactly what I've been doing, lab work, because there's so much research out there and so many conflicting views.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so please feel free to keep asking questions. That's why we're here. So it's so great. I just wanted to touch upon, I know some of us are here for our own nutritional needs, so I'm gonna, hopefully this will be helpful as well, though, if you have kids that you're working with. Something that comes up frequently in my work is the how of how we're eating. And so the idea is everything in moderation. So sometimes there's a lot of stress. I know in Los Angeles, I know, Jami, you're up north, but sometimes the stress can be so much about staying away from certain types of food or having a certain restriction over the child's diet that it can cause actually a lot more discomfort for the parent, stress for the child, and no fun. So we try across the board to just say moderation, and you try your best to have that balance. And we're going to give some more tips even after this slide about, how to choose that kind of regimen throughout your day, how to have that balance. But also that if a child's saying, one of my favorite ideas is when a child's saying no to a food, it doesn't necessarily mean no, meaning never. And we're very conscious of what no means, and we want to honor someone's ability to say no. While at the same time, no often for food could mean, no, I'm not interested in that at this moment because I'm eating pasta, so I don't want the broccoli. So it doesn't mean we take the broccoli away and say, oh, he doesn't like broccoli, but we just say, oh, you're right, you're eating pasta first, and then you'll take a bite of that broccoli. It also could come up, I was actually talking to my mom, and she was saying even exploring the time of day. It might be, I didn't want that at night, or in the morning, but what if we had eggs at nighttime, right? Yes. So really playing with food, and then the more we expand the palette, right, and the options, then the child might come up to you the next morning and say, yeah, actually, I would like that. And also from a hospital setting, when there's illnesses that might change taste buds, might affect textures and experiences with food, when we allow our children to take a pause, when we hear, or ourselves to take a pause when the child says no, we're then able to ask them, like, how do you want to eat it? Do you want to take 2 bites, 3 bites? Do you want to eat on this side of your plate, the other side? So we can be a lot more playful and give that shared control. I also love the idea of the use of colors. So really thinking about how to create a plate that incorporates, or even throughout your day, incorporates that the child has all different colors of food. So that means that really taps into those fruits and vegetables because they have beautiful colors. And I actually don't necessarily mean the neon electric colors that turn your mouth a different color, but I mean the natural ones that really are beautiful to explore. And for the littlest ones, they're so fun to paint with and do art projects with. And now you've got your child really playing with what food smells like, and that mindfulness work that we did earlier today. So that plays into that sensory system. So we're talking about smells and colors and really giving that child a sense of control over what they're about to ingest and their experience of the food. The next part is the where. So we want to set up the children so that we're joining. I know, Jami, you were saying this before too, like how to make this interactive in your family. So setting up time where you're all cooking together, you're all cleaning together, you're all setting the table together, really inviting the children to join in. When children create their own food, they enjoy eating it. They put a lot of work in it, and they wanna eat it then. Sometimes they'll eat things that they never would have tried before, but because they found the ingredients in their garden, or they went to the store and helped you out. And of course, during COVID, maybe they're just helping write the list. They're looking in the pantry, they're opening the fridge, and they're saying, you know what we don't have? I would really love to try this, right? And you could even use books from home or recipe guides, and they could look through, and there's sometimes these beautiful pictures, and they could say, I want to make that. And then we can go from there. And then you're going to collaborate. So the collaborating starts with using communal utensils and serving bowls. And again, those colors I love to add in. But when a child can serve themselves, again, they're getting to have that sensory and embodied experience of eating. So they're no longer being told what to eat, meaning like what amount to eat at any given time, but they're allowed to decide how much is on their plate, and then they're allowed to go get more. And it allows them to even start to moderate, how much do I really need right now? Do I take too much on my plate, or maybe I should start with a little bit? They can set it up on their plate. And another part to this is really honoring eating as its own time. So again, I keep kind of talking about this mindfulness, but it's really important to do one activity at a time. And so with these long, long days at home, if you allow meal time to be separate from technology, separate from schoolwork, separate from running outside, and just allow a meal to be a meal as its own activity. It's like you just entered a ballet class and that's all you're doing. the child can really engage and enjoy it, feel satisfied, and then move to the next activity. And then there'll be less grazing, like moving around the house and eating all day long. There'll be less cleanup. And again, that invites a wonderful opportunity for conversations and engaging. And I'm going to pause for a second because then I wanted to touch upon a little bit about sleep and eating. But any questions as I'm going through this? This is a lot of different ranges of eating with kiddos in our own family.
I mean, I feel like this applies to anyone.
Yeah,
One of my favorite things, I love travel, and I wrote a book about airplane travel with children. And one of the things that I love is that on the plane, when you are served, you have to clear everything away and just eat. And then after that's done, I know sometimes people watch TV, but I actually recommend that you turn it off and you just have your meal. And it actually makes the flight go by. So, and it's like, wow, imagine if we did that on the ground and we just sat and ate. So
That's really funny you say that. I used to fly a lot for work. And I always felt like when I kept the TV on while I eat, it would go so much slower because I could calculate the amount of time it took to eat, which would be like 3-4 minutes, or no, that's insane, but like, yeah, or like 7 minutes.
Right.
Not fast at all.
Oh,
So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Is there not a protocol for kids when they don't like a vegetable or a food item to keep reintroducing it up to 7 or 8 times before you finally say, okay, they don't like this vegetable?
Well, I haven't heard a set rule like that, but I think that's really fun and
or at least trying it enough times and reintroducing it at different times of the day, like you say. And it's so telling of as parents how we think of our children. I know that the newer generations are more in tune with their children and how they feel, and empowering them to think for themselves and to choose for themselves. But growing up and even with my own kids, it was, there were no options. Like, you have to eat this, and this is, the old saying, how many people are dying of starvation, and you're so blessed that you have this meal. And one of the things that I always talk about in therapy is with adults, is that how were you raised? Were you led to eat, especially with my obese patients? I really dig deep in that. Were you forced to eat and finish your meal? Where you never had an opportunity to listen to your body and feel fullness and say, I'm full and I do not want to eat anymore, and be allowed to not eat any more of your food. And that signaling and listening to your body to when it's hungry and when it's full. So it goes the same with types of food and introducing different types of food too.
Yeah, I think that also, Jami, or all of us, it's when I talk about taking that pause when there's like a no or a resistance, it's allowing us to appreciate that the child is saying, let me get ready for this. I couldn't predict it. I don't know what it's going to taste like. It looks different. So they have to really use some executive functioning skills and really plan what this is all about. And it takes a beat. It takes a little bit. And we forget about that. And it feels like it could be personal, like, I made this for you, you have to eat it. But it's not. And they're really just exploring what's in front of them. And then also, there's so much fun with when we're talking about like try it so many times, there are so many ways to eat something. So 2 parts. One is like, have you steamed it? Have you had it raw? Have you had it with sauces? Did you put some seasoning on it? Did you change the shape of it? I actually told my son the other night, he's 10 years old and he's almost as tall as me, but I looked at him and he was walking around the kitchen with a cucumber, like a huge cucumber, and just like eating it. And he says, is it okay if I'm eating it like this? And I said, yeah, when you were a baby or younger, any type of food that was something he could hold, he would eat it. He loved
Oh, wow.
He felt like he had like some type of warrior kind of holding grasp on its food. So again, it was just so funny to remember that. But I was like, yeah, you can eat a whole cucumber if you'd like. So there's lots of ways we could eat it. And then the other part is that as adults, we have so many options. Like some nights we want pasta and the next night we don't.
Exactly.
And that's allowed. But with children, we tend to be like, how dare you not want that right now?
Yeah.
So
I was thinking that too. Like,
being more
how much
respectful.
of my eating is based on my mood? Like, I want certain smells and certain spices, and so the
Yeah.
kids are the same way.
Yes. So I'll touch upon. I apologize. I'll touch upon sleep a little bit. I mean, this is its own topic, but I think during specifically around this pandemic, but again, you can go on with it as well, is that we are setting up some mindfulness around closing up the kitchen and having meal times. I think that can help out. I'm hearing a lot of parents talking about it feels very overwhelming and overloading, like it's constantly like they're doing, a million jobs in one day. And so just setting those parameters on like when the kitchen's closed, it's closed, really can help everyone out to transition into bedtime. And allowing, Jami, maybe you have a rule about this, like have some of the knowledge around this as well, but we do want to allow more than, half an hour before bedtime to just kind of like close down. So it's not like we've just quickly eaten and then we're falling asleep. So we have some time for digestion. And thinking about before bed, like it's been mentioned already, really holding back on some of the sugars and processed foods, but really thinking about foods that can really kind of settle the child. And I tend to look at individual differences of each child. So really thinking about what does that child need to wind down? Jami, do you have an idea about that for how long before bed or?
So if you look at the digestive system, and from the time that we eat and put the food in our mouth and it goes into our stomach, the timing, this also depends on the amount of food that we're eating and what it involves as far as the macronutrients, if it's carb heavy versus protein heavy versus fat heavy, or a combination of all those, which it's good to have a little bit of each of those macronutrients. It takes the stomach anywhere between 2 to 3 hours to start sending that food into boluses into the small intestine. So anywhere between 2 to 3 hours, so the stomach has time to digest the food and turn it and kind of pass it on to the small intestine for absorption to occur. I think that would be ideal. Only because if you sleep right after you eat, you can bring food back up into your esophagus, heartburn. When we eat, the blood flow goes, for the most part, goes to your digestive system to help digest the food. So it's better to give that and be awake and up, and not lie down right after you eat. So anywhere between 2 to 3 hours is based on the science. Now it could differ depending on individuals.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a media question after that. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I was just going to mention that while we're in this pandemic, I know as a parent myself, it can be really hard to go from late schedules into eating into bed. And so obviously, again, all of this that we're talking about, I just wanted to mention, isn't prescriptive or a diagnosis, just something that we consider, and we also take into consideration when our child is acting a certain way after they've eaten, or maybe sometimes is easier to fall asleep versus other times they're not, just like ourselves, that we're just paying attention and noticing it. But please ask your question too.
No, if I eat, well, snacking for me is more so a religion. And if I eat like, let's say 2 to 3 hours before bedtime, most likely I'm going to have a snack before bed, but then that disrupts my digestion process.
Mm-hmm.
So
So it also depends on what you eat, right? If you grab like celery sticks or carrot sticks or some cucumbers, um, that the digestion of that is minimal. Although with celery, maybe because it's fibrous, it might take a little longer. But it's not like having, I don't know,
A cookie or ice
something heavy, yeah. And also sugary snacks could sometimes kind of make you hyper because of the sugar, and make you more alert. So, you know, 2 to 3 hours is usually the recommended, but what I find that helps, is drinking tea and having something, right? So if you are hungry, drinking some chamomile tea or mint tea, nothing like caffeinated, because that could keep you up at night, but kind of a ritual where, after dinner, but waiting about an hour, and then start drinking tea. What I do now, and especially when it's cold, is I boil water and I add, a few drops of lemon and some slices of ginger, and that helps with digestion. And it's also, it just feels really good on my on my stomach and my belly. And my stomach has something in it, so it's not acidic to where I am feeling hunger because I ate 2 hours ago. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess these, I was thinking about some of the things, some tips that potentially, I could share for a takeaway. And these are some of the things that I came up with. And I think a lot of it kind of overlaps with the conversation that Lori and the things that Lori addressed. But I talked a lot about nutrition and food, but hydration is very important. And again, that tea in between meals, it really helps with keeping your body hydrated. Soups, any liquids that you eat throughout the day contribute to the hydration, but absolutely water is the, so I say there's a lot of foods that hydrate your body, but water is the only one that cleanses. So drinking water throughout the day is really important. A vegetarian meal per day. If you're not a vegetarian and you do enjoy animal protein and animal foods, trying a vegetarian, there's research, so much research behind it, as far as cardiovascular health and lipid, the helping with lipid panel, and just overall intake, increasing your intake of micronutrients. As far as veggies and fruits with every snack, I always have, and Shada could attest to this, I always have celery and carrots in my refrigerator, because if I crave crunch. I don't know if it's like salty, crunchy foods where it could be potato chips or packaged snacks, cucumbers with lemon juice over it and salt a little bit, or apples with a little bit of salt. Those are always good to have around. It's good to plan meals a week at a time, especially right now where we don't want to go grocery shopping. I used to be one that would go grocery shopping for the day and for the meal and bring food home that way. But right now, because everything has to be done, a week or 2 weeks in advance, kind of planning out your meals, having those spices and those herbs at hand, so you can go in your freezer and grab and choose and do that. A lot of these things we've already talked about.
Jami, I was just going to add that a ritual that I have been doing for a couple years now is even when the groceries come into the house, and this is pre-COVID, but now it actually applies to even cleaning off things, but cleaning the fruits and vegetables and having them in a bowl and cutting up the celery before putting it away. So nothing goes into the fridge in those bags that you brought them home from. But having it already cut up, especially for kids, but I think for ourselves as well, when it's already accessible, it feels like a lot when you bring it home, like it's the last thing you want to do. But once you do it, it's done. You never have to wash it again. You don't have to cut it later. And it is amazing, especially with kids, how much they will open that fridge and they will take out celery because it's already cut. Versus if it's in the stock, it's like, forget it, I don't even want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so pre all this, it was really helpful for lunch making too. But it will allow your family to have access to that food.
Yeah, definitely prepping and having those things available.
You leave it in the water bowl?
Oh, I just meant like I'll have a bowl with like apples and the avocados, and like I'll just kind of have it in a bowl on the counter.
Oh, got it.
For those that can sit out. And then if the ones that go inside are in Tupperware, so they're all set, ready to pull out.
Yeah, that's
what practice.
I
mean, this has been a while now, but it was a new turnaround for me when I first did it, but it was a game changer. And now, especially with our hygiene, it's even more imperative that anything that goes inside the fridge is clean and ready to eat.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially right now during these times.
Yeah.
We talked about cooking together. I think planning treats, especially with kids. So if there is cookies, if they're craving cookies or cake, so much better to make it from scratch. You have control over the ingredients and the quality of ingredients that you use in your food. So doing that, I think, and allows for family time and doing something together. And then this was something that we talked about with the dietitians at work, is planning small Zoom theme parties, to where, like, if the grandparents want to see the kids and they haven't seen them, planning dinner time together, and perhaps even cooking a meal that's similar. So everyone's having Mexican food for that night, or Italian, having pasta, and then planning dinner parties that way. Shopping trips these days is so important. Knowing what you're going to eat and knowing what you're going to buy, and having a shopping list ready so you don't go into the store and have to ramble and run around, especially these days. Avoiding busy shopping hours. That's something that I've noticed, like, especially like today I walked over to Trader Joe's and there was a line because of the timing of the day. But if I go early in the morning or later in the evening, it's not, there's not a line to get into the store. Categorizing your shopping list always helps. So knowing what you're going to pick up from the meat department, knowing we're going to pick up from the vegetable section and the fruit section. These are just small tips that, it's, you don't think about it, but when you do and do that and organize it, it makes it much easier, especially with small children. And then there's a lot of local farms these days. I don't know about Southern California, but we have a lot of it in Northern California, where the local farms, especially now that the farmers market are not as busy, they deliver boxes of fruits and vegetables to your door. And it's a great convenience. And there's different prices based on what they, deliver to your door.
Yeah.
I have a question. Surprise.
Love you.
So kind of TMI, but whatever. So I get crazy, and this is kind of, I think it has to do with age, for lack of a better term, but getting older and having my periods, I've realized that I get period back now, which also kind of leads to my mother has a terrible back. Is there anything I can eat or do? I know exercise is part of that, but on the eating food side, is there anything I can do that goes along with the exercise to like help with back pain?
Jami, you're on mute again.
Stretching.
Is it all stretching? Is it food related?
I mean, if it's gas, I would definitely.
No,
So,
it's like legit pain.
so
Like the yoga and
So,
stretching.
the
yeah,
other,
I mean,
Yeah.
nothing nutritionally I
Yeah.
could say that would alleviate. I think anti-inflammatory foods during that time, during your PMS, would definitely help. So concentrating more on that would definitely, focusing on anti-inflammatory foods. So, and a lot of dark green veggies and cooked preferably, so you avoid gas. But as far as the actual muscle pain, that would be something that needs more like a physical therapy of some sort, and would not.
well, I was also going to add, just from the psychological standpoint, there's actually a great book a friend of mine gave me called Eating by the Light of the Moon. You could check
I've
it out.
heard of that.
I have no relationship to it, but I thought it was a beautiful book. But just that when we think about like the need to snack, or the consistency of like eating all the time, but really kind of thinking about, and especially during menstruation and hormone changes, we have some rules in our mind. And not that this is from the book necessarily, but just that we have rules in the mind of what that means and how to nourish ourselves. But it also could be an opportunity to slow down, sit down to eat versus snacking. And maybe the slowing down allows the body to digest and process what that feeling is. I know this might be a lot to think about, but just kind of switching up some of the habits that have become habits, which might enter into what's that pain really about during that time. So it's
That's a
something
great
we
point.
And even like at late night, I know that I can have even my own rituals, or clients I talk to with their own kids, of saying, oh, well, it helped them how they felt. And when we're using food for how we feel, we can really look at it and say, what's this food for? And again, I think the first part is that mindfulness of slowing down and saying, is this really what my brain is telling me, or is it my belly? Is it my back? And kind of not using it as an excuse of like, oh, well, it's just hormones, we have to eat.
Right.
But yes, we have to nourish ourselves to take care of ourselves. That's what those hormones are telling us to do. So something to consider.
I think if you're regular and you have a schedule to where where you're entering into that zone, that PMS zone, is starting and changing and addressing your eating too, and concentrating are more on healthier eating. So, if you're drinking, drinking less, if you're not sleeping enough, making sure, like Lori said, being really mindful about what feels good for your body, that as you approach that time, you're taking better care of yourself so it doesn't turn into that chronic pain. And there's a lot of psychology behind all of this too.
And I mean, again, I know it's a whole nother topic, but I appreciate that you were able to share with us and be open about it, because there is, I mean, we are women here together. There is this idea that we're supposed to feel pain, and we're supposed to be uncomfortable, and we're supposed to eat yucky during this time. And that's just the way it is. And there needs to be that empowering of like, we actually can take care of ourselves and feel good.
Absolutely.
But it's a lot of changing, a lot of,
yeah,
not always easy. Well,
thank you. This was great. Really enjoyed it. We didn't get to the last slide, but are you, if anyone needs the slides and wants us to share, I guess Negeen can share those slides.
Yes, if anyone wants the slides or the handouts, just send me an email. My email's right here, and I can share that with you.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. It's really fun to have a conversation and be able to collaborate together.
Absolutely. Yes, it was great.
Well, thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it. And these events are always so meaningful. I apply at least like 5 things that I learn each time. Yeah, so
that's awesome.
Yeah, I truly appreciate you taking the time to hold another seminar based off of the interest from last time.